armies of men in Burton suits instead. I wish I'd been doing exciting campaigns in Spain and France. Instead, I've spent the last 30 years in many motorway service stations and terrible industrial estates, forging a career in design and, surprisingly, to me, certainly, in the potteries. I've just written a book about this, and I was amazed anyone wanted to read a book about it. But I think that what I can begin to see is that it is really important to consider our manufacturing industries. There's much, much too much defeatist talk about taking all our manufacturing industries offshore. And one thing has very clearly emerged for me, which is that if Matthew and I, my husband, Matthew Rice and I, can successfully, profitably run a factory in Stoke-on-Trent, then anybody could. It really is completely not acceptable to say that we have to rush away and find cheap labour overseas. How does it all come about? I read English at London University, very much longed to be someone like Jeremy's assistant, had no other plans than to work in a publishing office. But one day I had an extraordinary conversion. I was looking for a present for my mum, working in London at the time in a small knitwear company, near publishing. I hadn't seen her much, and I thought 2 cups and saucers, that's what I'd like to buy her. To say, I hope we'll soon sit down together and have a chat. And I stood in a china shop, and I realised that everything that the industry was making back 30 years ago, in 1984, when this happened, was completely out of step with how we lived then and now. My mum was quite sort of in the vanguard of sort of messy kitchen life, colourful, mismatched. And her kitchen in North Oxford was the most convivial, welcoming, lovely place. And I couldn't see anything in this nice china shop that had any relationship to her life, to her taste. And it hit me that I was going to make those cups and saucers. Not being very well organised, it was probably only 2 or 3 days before her birthday. I didn't get the company going in time for that birthday. Instead, I found a potter to make a set of cups and saucers for her. It's probably rather late for her birthday. But I started asking friends, how would I go about getting nice pottery made? And a friend who was a graphic designer said, well, Stoke-on-Trent. And he literally, with a marvellous moment at a party, he passed his pockets, he said, I've just been in Stoke, and he pulled out a business card, and he wrote the name down on the back of my back packet. And he said, this is the man you need to go and see. He's got a little backstreet casting business in Stoke-on-Trent. And come tell me how you get on. Bring him up, go and see him. And a few days later, I got off the train at Stoke, and my life changed absolutely, completely. I fell in love, but I was also mortally shocked by what I found. The mess that we've left behind us as we've abandoned heavy industry is a real shame on all of us. It's a terrible, terrible thing to just abandon those manufacturing cities. I think Richard Crossman wrote in his diaries in 1963, I think he was housing minister, he's going to look at housing in Stoke, then as now, a problem. And he said, oh, yeah, this is marvellous people here, but the only solution for a city this degraded is to evacuate it and burn it down. It's extraordinary finding that and realising that if I could only stick to 1963, it's got so much worse since then. The worst being the destruction and the demolition. But I was shocked by the desolation of it, but utterly romanced by the tradition, the skills, the collection in the ceramics collection in the museum in the city there is one of the wonders of the world. Representatives from all the factories in the area. A simply beautiful collection. It has about 10 visitors a year. So if any of you went, you'd be very, very welcome. It's completely marvellous. And for me, the city was very, very redolent of those incredibly impressive, exciting traditions. And I walked through the city later on in the day and passed cobwebby windows full of dusty pottery. And more often than not, factories were closed. They were closed and closing then in '84. And an awful lot more of them have gone since. And my dream on that day, I mean, it was absolutely clear to me that what I wanted to do was to bring one of those big Victorian factories back to life. And if you were to come there now, and I think that some of you have been there, if you haven't, please come soon. What you find is a place where we've got 250 people. And the most joyful thing for me is seeing visitors come out of a factory tour, so animated, so overjoyed by it, so excited to see that you can make things, and that this team of skilled men and women make wonderful things with such good humour and grace. But I didn't, that first day I had no idea how it was going to happen, but what I hoped helped for about 5 years, which was that I would find someone who would first help me bring my ideas sort of into a practical form, and then make them for me so that I could sell them. I didn't know that I had, the man Terry had sent me to, I was incredibly lucky in many respects. Brilliant, brilliant winemaker, fantastic craftsman, not such a good businessman. And while I was working with him, there were a couple of shaky-making incidents where the gates were chained up, as well as down in his own society times. He actually went bankrupt again the weekend and ran out of options at one day, turned up in our office in Fulham and said, I'm going into liquidation, I can't start up again. And if you want to buy the business, you've got till Monday, otherwise the receivers are in. And we raised the money to buy that business as a going concern over the weekend. And my father, who very admirably and generously wrote the biggest cheque, did so saying, this is such a mistake. You're a design you are a design company, you're good at marketing. Why are you going to manufacturing? And he was completely right. He was also completely wrong, because the adventure of manufacturing is, I think, what's made ours an authentic and interesting company. It's also, I'm sure, why we're much smaller than some of the other enormous companies that we're sort of sometimes compared to. Matthew and I are very enthusiastic, very energetic, and incredibly amateurish. So, it is what it is. And it's worth noting here, officially, that my dad strikes a hard bargain. It was equity, not a loan. And I think some of my suppliers have sort of discovered that it can be a bit like that. It has to be. But somewhere I found, to my point, the whole thing surprised me totally. But I found that I did have reserves of determination. I think I learned two main lessons. I haven't learned very much. I don't know nearly enough about Stoke, all the potteries, all the history of the place. But I do know that there's more to life than margin. It's really, really important. But when we're shopping, we're doing the most political thing we ever do. If you support British companies, and that's terrible, it's so difficult. The Buy British campaign of the 70s, it sort of sank British industry because the cars died on the motorway, the tellies didn't work, the washing machines soon broke. But it was true then, and it should be true now. It does matter that we support our own. And we do forego some significant profit levels by staying in Stoke. But I just don't have any doubt whatsoever. It's such an easy decision. It's so much nicer working Stoke. I don't have to jump on an airplane and go to China every month. Okay. The other thing, I can't remember what it is. But please come to Stoke, because here's the thing: it was a very depressing thing for a city to just slide out of view. The coal mines in Stoke were closed, and the foundries have gone. and a lot of the pottery factories have gone. And from being very proud of their city, suddenly, over the last 30 years, it became something sad to say that you came from there. And I absolutely hate that. I think that we do need to support and visit our provincial cities. And so I think mini breaks in the Midlands. Thank you.